I never thought I'd be making a video like this, but there's a trend in Germany where we're seeing more and more home searches, and more people are wondering, what happens to my Bitcoin during a home search? Can they be confiscated that easily? Now, there's a great video that popped up from Roland at Sturen im Kopf, where a lawyer talks about the possibilities of confiscation because things are getting riskier in Germany. Of course, that doesn't mean that every house or anything like that will be searched right away. It is still, I would say, a very low probability that something like this will happen. But here it is discussed very well whether something like this is even possible, whether Bitcoin can be confiscated. Can they just access your Bitcoin from the hardware wallet? What about the Bitcoin on the Trezor or the Bitbox or the Ledger? Are the Bitcoins really safe? Here I've picked out the best clips. In the first part, we'll cover what a home search is in general and how you should behave during one. In the second case, it specifically deals with Bitcoin and crypto assets. This is really super interesting. These days in Germany, you can actually get a home search just for insulting a politician. And insults are always a very, very open matter of definition here. Sometimes just calling someone a fool is enough, but other times it has to be something stronger and so on. So there's a certain level of arbitrariness from the state, and there's not much you can do against that. I actually know people personally who had their crypto assets confiscated during a home search. So this is really, let's say, a $1,000 topic that you can't just brush aside. First, we're going to take a look at the introduction to what a home search actually is. Later, I'll also share my thoughts, and then we'll get into Bitcoin.
Then, of course, the exciting question. It's 6 a.m., and there's a knock at the front door. Who doesn't know it? Who doesn't know it, right? Back in the day, you'd come home at that hour yourself, but these days, sometimes the police show up with backup. So how should I behave then? So what are the first steps, or do I even have to let them in? And what are the things I should do right away?
Let's put it this way, usually by then, the kid's already a bit in the well. What you should definitely do is immediately inform the criminal defense attorney you trust and then accept the measure. Otherwise, you just get put in a tight spot, cornered, and it'll still go down. So you really need to have this whole thing professionally, managed ideally by a criminal defense attorney. But usually they won't be there in time. What I'll definitely do is get an independent witness for the search. It can be a roommate, it can be a neighbor, it can be any third person who, ideally, is sober and fully aware and can witness what's going on. The second important lesson is don't make any statements. So this is really it. The police will always try to do that, and it's pretty much a part of every home search. Come on, just say a little something. Do you have anything? Just please don't say that you only have to provide your personal details. The next important point is to take a good look at the search warrant. What does it cover? Does it only cover my room? Does it cover the whole house? Does it possibly also cover a car? Does it include office spaces? Is it especially older than 6 months? It has to be a maximum of 6 months old. Otherwise, it's already invalid by now. So those are definitely points to keep an eye on. And then also observe the behavior of the officers, because you do have options to have a home search reviewed afterward. Having said this kind has already fallen into the well, it has happened. Nevertheless, due to the fact that we as criminal defense lawyers are seeing more and more house searches that, in our opinion and according to our legal assessment, are completely out of place because the proportionality is simply not right, we are having more and more of them investigated and are increasingly being found right. And I think that's the only way you can educate your prosecutors, your judiciary, by having the courts tell them afterwards, listen, that wasn't the case.
Okay, so that was some really interesting general information. And now in the next part, we're really going to talk about Bitcoin. And here, the boat accident becomes really relevant again. You can just say, I lost all my Bitcoin in the boat accident. I don't own any Bitcoin. I don't have any keys 2021. And silence is going to be very, very important here because it's a really crucial tool during a home search. As has already been said, don't say anything, just keep your mouth shut.
Now, of course, let's talk about the issue of prohibition, confiscation, and also the expropriation of cryptocurrencies. Let's break it down. Is it legally possible to ban cryptocurrencies, like Bitcoin and similar assets? What's your take on that? So now let's talk about the practical implementation, and especially the question of confiscation. Topic of home searches, which we discussed last week. Someone knocks, takes the USB stick, a supposed USB stick, let's say it's the Ledger, Trezor, or something else, and then it ends up with the prosecutor's office. So there are, 1,020 Bitcoins on it because I insulted Robert Habeck, and now it's with the prosecutor's office. So first off, what's the legal situation? Can they actually do that? What about potential bans that could come up? Maybe a bit of speculation. And let's put it this way, getting the assets back once they've been confiscated.
I think a general ban on cryptocurrencies in Germany is pretty unlikely. They're just too present for that, and the lobby behind them is too powerful now. So I don't see any problems there. As mentioned, exchanges are accountable to BaFin, which can revoke licenses if regulations like anti-money laundering and counterterrorism financing aren't met, or if reserves and securities aren't achieved. A general ban is unlikely, or even the mentioned reserves and securities. If those aren't met, licenses could be revoked there. I think a general ban is out of the question. When it comes to private assets, it's just like with any other assets. It is possible to confiscate assets acquired illegally. The state can do that. It is regulated in the Criminal Code in the 73 subsequent sections. If those assets come from criminal activities, the state can seize them. You know how it is. When they're driving around in Ferraris that they've seized from some clan members, for example, then it's obviously easier than with cryptocurrencies. Well, they're either on a publicly accessible exchange, where they would have to be either withdrawn or held in trust, which is usually what happens. Or, of course, you might have them on your individual tech devices, and in that case, they can basically just be seized. Again, it's really not a legal issue. Or you might have them on your individual tech devices, and in that case, they can basically just be seized. It's really not a legal issue. Legally, it's pretty straightforward. It's regulated just like other assets. Again, it's really not a legal issue. Legally, this is relatively easy and is regulated as with other assets. They can also be temporarily secured, especially if it's still in the investigation phase, so they don't just disappear before a proper seizure happens. The best protection is to stay silent. The real secret is the access and knowledge you have. If the prosecutor or tax office comes, don't say anything. Call your lawyer or tax advisor. Remember, if your Bitcoin isn't on an exchange, not much can happen during a house search if you stay quiet. Bitcoin on an exchange can be confiscated, but if it's on a hardware wallet, you're safer.
So it's very important to note that if you don't have your Bitcoin on a stock exchange or on an exchange, then relatively little can happen to you during a house search as long as you don't open your mouth. So Bitcoin on an exchange can obviously be easily confiscated, but if you just have your Bitcoin on a hardware wallet like a Trezor, I'll drop a link to a Trezor down below. In my opinion, it's one of the best hardware wallets on the market, and you can even get a discount with the code Bitcoin Hotel. If you have a hardware wallet like that, then not much can happen. On a Trezor, I'll put a link to a Trezor below, using, in my opinion, one of the best hardware wallets on the market. There's even a discount with the code Bitcoin Hotel. If you have such a hardware wallet, relatively little can happen. Even if the hardware wallet gets taken, the police don't know the code, and you don't have to give it up. No one's going to hold a gun to your head and say, hand over your passwords or I'll blow your brains out. Of course, in the past, there have been exchanges that have actually handed over the keys. So when deals were made, it was just like, okay, in 2001, this wasn't in Germany, but in the US, they would just say, all right, either you give me the keys, meaning the passwords for the Bitcoin, or you're going to prison for twice as long. And then they basically blackmailed the people. So anything can happen, of course. So these weren't Bitcoin exchanges. They were more like Bitcoin trading places that apparently were involved in illegal activities. Then the government just said, hey, you've got like 5,000 Bitcoin or something, and if you want a lighter sentence, just hand over the keys for those 5,000 Bitcoin, and you'll just do a little time in jail. I actually don't know of any cases in Germany, but I do know of instances where house searches led to wallets being confiscated. But then, let's just say the situation was that you couldn't access the Bitcoin. And then there's always the option, if you have the 24 recovery words, to just buy a new wallet as soon as the old one is gone, and restore the Bitcoin on the new wallet. You can do this with a Trezor, a Bitbox, and so on. And then once you have restored the Bitcoin, you can now send it to a new address, to a new wallet or something like that. And even if the police manage to crack the passwords of the wallet or something, they'll just end up with an empty wallet. If you find out that your Bitcoin wallet has been stolen or confiscated, it's always a good idea to enter the 24 recovery words into a new hardware wallet and restore your Bitcoin there. Then you can transfer those Bitcoin to another wallet or a new address. You can also create a subaddress on the new hardware wallet or something like that so that the old wallet can't be brute forced potentially. I mean, it's very, very complicated, really tough to pull off, but with some wallets, people have actually managed to brute force the passwords. That obviously takes a long time. It can take 4 weeks, 2 or 3 months, or even half a year or a year. The question is whether the incentive is high enough to actually brute force or crack this wallet. It's potentially possible, so it's always recommended that if a wallet goes missing, whether it's theft, confiscation, or whatever, it's best to restore the Bitcoin on a new hardware wallet and then just transfer it to a fresh wallet. It must also be said that with such new models from E.G, a Trezor, which also has a secure element or a bitbox, I'm not 100% sure technically, but it probably shouldn't have been possible to carry out such a brute force attack. But I'm not 100% sure. But I know that with older models, older wallets, some of which don't have a secure element, there have actually been cases where you could actually brute force the passwords. So we're really talking about the passwords here, not the 24 recovery words, because brute forcing those 24 recovery words is nearly impossible.
That means, and this is also the tip we are giving you, everything that is not forbidden is allowed, as stated in Article 2 of our Basic Law. Take advantage of the gray areas. Ask your tax advisor how you can handle things properly. I don't think you have to give anything away, and as long as it's not regulated and hasn't been decided by the highest court, you can interpret it in your favor. Period. That's at least how we handle it.
The rule is, if not forbidden, you can do it. This applies to tax planning using legal gray areas. Legally, there's no ban yet. That definitely applies in the area of tax planning, so let's say, taking advantage of the legal gray areas that exist. In the end, you have to say that, at least legally, there's currently no ban in sight. It is true that ever-increasing surveillance is planned at EU level. We know this, of course, from the asset registers, which also became an issue at the time of money laundering and terrorist financing with regard to Russia, where I believe 1 or 2 villas in Lake Starnberg were searched. At the same time, you have to say, report everything cleanly if it's taxable, because if you don't, you're basically painting a target on your back. Just like with some of our clients, for example, Bitcoin, Binance, and so on, are required to disclose this data due to their access to the German market. And it's likely that all exchanges that are tradable in Germany will have this obligation. With some of our clients, for example, Bitcoin, Binance, and so on, they are required to disclose this data due to their access to the German market. And it's likely that all exchanges that are tradable in Germany will have this obligation. That means at some point, the tax office will come after you, especially with DAC, which is supposed to come into effect in 2026.
But it's also very, very important to take away that there are still gray areas right now, and you're pretty much in a good spot if, as mentioned in the video, you just stay quiet and don't say anything. And that's a problem that a lot of people might face down the line because, as many tax experts say, right now Bitcoin or crypto isn't really on the radar of tax investigators or anything like that. They're still totally overwhelmed by it. But the tools will definitely improve here. And for 5 or 6 years, it's going to be a lot easier to do. And that's why I always recommend using Cointracking, a tax tool where you can easily track your taxes. Here you can also see which coins are within the tax period and which ones are not. You can sign up completely for free. With the code BTC Hotel, you even get a discount if you sign up for a subscription here. Here you can generate tax reports and so on. So right now, it's not really on the radar, but it could definitely come more into focus, especially regarding Bitcoin taxation and the whole topic. This whole thing is definitely a bit of a paranoid topic today. I still wanted to share it because I found the video really interesting. I'll also put a link down below for you. 2001 is 2 videos. I've edited together clips from 2 videos. I'll put a link down below to the channel Taxes with Head. Really great channel, highly recommend it. They report really well here, especially about new changes regarding Bitcoin and crypto and so on. It's also important to mention that I'm not a tax advisor, and all of this really needs to be checked out. My statement from an official tax advisor. That's just my experience and my reaction to it. If you want to buy Bitcoin, check the link below. I'll also include a link to 21 Bitcoin. The easiest way to buy Bitcoin in Europe is with the code Bitcoin Hotel, which also gives you up to 20% off the fees when buying Bitcoin. I'm going to take a dip in the waves now. It's really cool here at Bitcoin Beach. See you later. Let me know in the comments below what you think about it. Have you maybe already had a house search? Until then, peace out.